So here's the down and dirty about VetCor. We've been in business about 8 years. I was not the founder. The founder was David Howard, my business partner now, who'd been an Army officer for 5 years. Last commanded a MEPS unit, Military Engines Processing Station in St. Pete, and got out and was in the insurance industry for 25 years. He hired me to start VetCor, so I was the first employee. About 8 months into it, and actually coming up on in a week, it'll be my 8-year anniversary as the owner. I had the opportunity to buy it after about 8 months. And then we've spent about 2 years, just over 2 years in franchise, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that. We currently have 10 franchise owners. That's 10 offices in addition to the one office that I own in Tampa. That's 21 territories. Many of the franchisees own multiple territories. Either they purchased multiple territories when they bought their original office, or they have since done well and added and expanded their territories. Our largest franchisee which was our first one, in fact, is a retired lieutenant colonel in the Florida National Guard. He owns 6 territories, and he has 2 separate offices, soon to open a 3rd office here in Florida. And then 27 total territories. We have a couple that haven't opened yet. Technically, we're classified in the franchising industry as an emerging brand, which really means we have a shit ton of territories available if anybody's interested. Our territory but as a result of that, we're really recognizing the early adopters. And so our territory size is typically larger than our competitions. Our competition is ServPro, ServiceMaster, and I'll get into what we do. But they're typically, their territory size is about 150,000 in population, and ours is about 400,000 in population. We have a lower franchise fee, and that's deliberate than any other restoration company in the franchise industry, because we wanted to lower the barrier to entry for veterans. And then, our training really is based on military standards, and you'll learn more about that in a sec. So what do we do? We're a restoration company. What does that mean? We do emergency water damage mitigation, mold remediation, and assessment. And that varies because some states require a license, most do not. I think there are 8. Mike will correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's 8 states require a license. Florida is one of them. But because we're a license holder, we're able to help with that. We do emergency roof tarping. We just finished doing something like 700 roof tarping assignments as a result of Hurricane Ida. We dispatched 5 franchisees, each grand total about 30 teams there to put roof tarps on people's homes. We do fire and smoke damage mitigation, biotrauma crime scene cleanup, which is a pretty interesting one. Tree debris.
You guys live and die by the Weather Channel.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, most of these things here, our daily business is dishwashers, ice makers, hot water heaters, air conditioning units, roof leaks.
Oh, gotcha.
And then when there's a hurricane, a disaster, a flood, it literally is a rainmaker event. Should you choose, if it happens in your area, or should you choose to be a franchisee and kind of ride to the sound of the guns and help people? And those things happen every day. For those of you in hot climates, I love the person who designed the float switch underneath your air handler. There's a little drip pan, because that thing fails all the time. The drip pan fills up and it spills all over people's homes. That's probably one of our largest sources of water damage. And then we do the emergency board up. Somebody runs a vehicle into a house, they have a fire, you name it. There's been the riots after this past year, race challenges and everything. We did some board up as a result of the riots here. And then we do peer review and subject matter expert consultation, because we're a preferred vendor for over 60 insurance companies. There were really 3 types of business models, and we try and take advantage of all of them. So we have a preferred vendor model where as I mentioned, we're on 8 TPAs. TPAs are third-party administrators. Insurance companies basically hire them to outsource their management of claims. It's kind of a risk mitigation measure, but also to kind of keep an arm's distance away, and also outsource, something that they're not necessarily as good at. And then of those 8 TPAs, we're a preferred vendor for over 60 insurance companies in Florida. About 10 of those, a little bit more, are national carriers. State Farm, Allstate, USAA, Amica, Nationwide, those kinds of companies. And then as a result, we're able to translate those relationships to other states. And as a result, we already have about 30% market share penetrated in the property and casualty insurance industry in every state in the union. Substantially more in Florida and more in the Southeast, but the least amount is about 30%. We nest that with independent local marketing to referral sources. Who are referral sources? Insurance agents. Now, I've been a USAA customer all my life. I didn't know what the difference was between an insurance agent and a company. The company is the one who has the policy that's in effect, that's actually going to provide the financial backing to pay off if you have a claim and you file your claim with the company. But the agent, absent the USAA model, is the person who is appointed by the company to sell that product, to sell that policy to you. They typically don't participate in the claims process. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. When they do, that's a referral source. We teach you how to market to those agents. Insurance adjusters who adjust the loss sometimes can help steer you or call in a preferred contractor like us. And then there's, oh my God, my house is flooded. I Google water damage. And we're just starting to get into and really starting to refine how we do the local, digital, hyper-local marketing. And so those are kind of the three business models. And we train you, and I think we have a significant advantage in one of those. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec. So, what is VetCor? Well, in my quest to become a civilian, I went to I was in Vistage, which is a pay-for-play CEO organization. And my Vistage mentor is an older West Point grad, salt of the earth kind of guy. But you have these world-class speakers come and talk about different topics. And so one of them came and talked about corporate culture. And, big trend was kind of stating your corporate beliefs. I said, you know what? All right, I'll give it a shot. And so I sat down and I just scribbled out, kind of what I believe in. And then I passed it on to my COO, Scott Walden, who's a retired Army Sergeant Major, my business partner, David Howard, and some of you may know Naval Academy grad, Kent Perro. Kent's a really good friend of mine. I was trying to recruit him in. He was still on active duty at the time. I was trying to recruit him in to be my franchising guy. And I said, hey, what do we believe in? And we just, between the four of us, we really just jotted these things down. I said, well, this is what we believe in, and this is what we're going to live by. And I thought it was pretty powerful. And as a result, I think it's one of the things that attracts franchisees and, frankly, our technicians, our employees, our teammates, because this is what we believe in. So, why VetCor? And this really gets to it. So one, just as a business model, the hot topic right now, if you talk to people in the private equity sector, they're buying up companies like mine left and right, particularly franchisors, because it's a recurring revenue model in the home services industries, because they're recession and pandemic proof. So you find something that's recession and pandemic proof and provides recurring revenue, that isn't a good investment, and it's a good industry to be in. Look, we just talked about it. You're joining a team of like-minded professionals, and not only is it your team that you choose to hire, fire, etc., but it's your team that you're surrounded with, your adjacent units, if you will, your fellow franchisees, and you want to talk about sharing lessons learned. They're not competitors because you're in different geographies, right? And so you can't, by the VetCor franchise agreement, you can't compete against one another. But don't think for a moment there's not a little bit of healthy competition about who's trying to earn more revenue and all that kind of stuff. But you share lessons learned, because the better one franchise does, the greater the brand does. The greater the brand does, the greater recurring revenue you get, the greater reputation you get, the better sale you get upon your exit, etc. Right? Here's another kind of aspect of, I'll call it the swagger, right? You get to deal with industry professionals. So I love talking to VPs of claims, presidents of insurance carriers, CEOs of insurance carriers, and other people in the industry, and tell them that my chief operating officer is a retired sergeant major and what that means. If he's an E9, there are no E10s. And people are like, wow, and And then they get to see him in action, or they watch him do, training, like during a lunch and learn or a continuing education. And they're just like in awe, because they're the part of the 93% that have never seen men and women like that in action. They just have no idea. The country reveres us. They thank us for their service, but in general, they have no clue who
They don't know us.
Nope.
They don't know us. It's true.
And man,
it is true.
I love walking around with this shirt on and watching my team, and there's a little swagger there. The other cool thing is I'm the veteran guy in Tampa. I serve on the Military Affairs Council of the Greater Tampa Chamber. People have me come speak to chambers of commerce, Rotary groups about veterans. I'm doing a thing on Veterans Day to talk about what it means to be a veteran in Florida. And I help a shit ton of veterans. I'm in the STAR program, Special Operator Transition Assistance Group from SOCOM, senior transitioning people. Man, I'm giving back, and that's where I want to be. And as a result, then when people are transitioning, guess who they call and guess who they connect with? So I get first pick on talent too, for veteran talent. And I'm a greedy son of a bitch, and I know who they're the ones I want on my team. And if I can't hire them, I'll connect them with fellow CEOs or people in the community. And that's a really cool place to be. We'll talk about that more in a second. And when I first thought about franchising this, and I talked to the TPAs and insurance carriers, I said, listen, I went to school. I went to the IFA, the International Franchise Association conference, 2 years in a row, and I joined the Certified Franchise Executive Program. And I almost completed that before we started franchising. So now I'm a certified franchise executive. And what I used to tell people is what I've learned is franchising is all about training, standardizing, and replicating. Know any institutions that have a good reputation in training, standardizing, and replicating? Replicating? And then they get to meet Sergeant Major retired Scott Walden, who has developed our training program. He's a master water restorer now, and he's a certified instructor with the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration certification. He does it better than anyone. The adjusters that have the continuing education credits will tell you, and then I go, well, guess who's training our technicians? Because now we have a secondary source of revenue, the VetCor Training Academy. Other companies can have us train their technicians and pay us. That preferred vendor program I mentioned. So because of that training standard, and they've seen us replicate, I had opened 2 other offices in South Florida before we started franchising. I've since closed them because I wanted to focus on my Tampa company is kind of the experimental one. And then, we're really a franchising company now. So I didn't want the span of control of 2 additional companies in South Florida. But they saw us replicate them and successful. So now we're trying to sell those off as territories, award them as territories. But as a result, they saw our training standards, and they also saw that now what we do is we want our franchisees to be focused on operational and technical excellence and customer service. So the first year in business, we handle all of the estimating for them. So they don't have to worry about the back office stuff. Now, in a year, they can learn that themselves and choose to take it on, or they can pay us to do it after the first year. But that also takes about $40,000 to $50,000 in salary off their plate that they have to pay, which is really sunk cost because they always have to have an estimator available, and we do that for them. And then after the first year, they can pay us, X dollars for X number for X dollar estimate, and it escalates, et cetera. And it's a pretty reasonable way because typically, even if you do hire someone, they're only 1 deep. And so what do you do when that person goes on vacation? And so as a result of that, the insurance carriers and the TPAs recognize that we're maintaining quality assurance in the loop, at least for the first year in business. So as a result, they've waived the requirements of the 1 to 3 years in business to become a preferred vendor on their program. Even the franchises like ServPro, ServiceMaster, PureClean, they haven't had that option available to them. And it's really based on our model. Because of that, the reputation, the brand known for timely, quality, reliable service, and the value of veterans. And I asked, somebody who's managing a preferred vendor program, I said, well, of your other vendors on the program, do they give times or do they give time windows? And I'd ask any of you out there, When's the last time you had a service call of any kind? And when did the service provider tell you they were going to
I'll be there at
at
10 o'clock.
8 to 12, and they show up at 1:30 and they don't call ahead of time. And then I just tell them, look, the brand of veterans, the brand of VetCor, timely, quality, reliable service, and the value of veterans is early is on time because on time is late. And then people go, wow, that resonates with me. I understand that. And everybody here has heard that before, and God forbid the first time you showed up, probably as a young officer, some big badass sergeant major like Scott Walden, can give you the knife hand and go, LT, what's the problem? But
Hey,
people
Paul,
understand that. They associate being early with veterans.
So
Go ahead.
a lot of the stuff that we've talked about is cultural, right? Like, and I get it, right? Like it's just a different, it's going to be a different vibe when it's all us, right? What about practices? Like, have you guys adopted any like specific maintenance practices? Like, have you lifted anything from the services that has been useful?
All the time. My next bullet, it's almost like I paid you to ask that question. My next bullet, opportunities for catastrophe response, right? So I would go to the insurance executive and say, hey, listen, you guys are in the risk management industry. I know what your biggest concern is, your biggest risk, and that's, particularly in Florida, hurricanes. So what's little old VetCor's capability to respond to a hurricane, right? And I said, so to make sure I understand what your concern is, let me rephrase it back to you. I think what you're asking me is what's our ability to deploy to a remote location under austere conditions, establish operations, and command and control those operations. Is that what you're asking me? And because they knew I was the Brigade S3 of the engineer brigade that was responsible for all combat and engineer operations throughout the entire country of Iraq. Scott Walden was a sergeant major of the engineer brigade in Afghanistan in 2016. So what did we do? We had an op plan on the shelf that had contingencies for white vehicles from enterprise, a contingency contract for temporary staffing, contingency contracts with subcontractors to do temporary roof tarping. And we learned, and we continued to learn our lessons conducting after action reviews after Hurricane Matthew in 2016, and then Hurricane Irma in 2017, which was huge. We earned $2 million in Hurricane Irma. And all we did was pull the con plan off the shelf and execute the con plan. And then we set up a talk. Our VetCor Training Academy now, in the building that I own, that we bought now, and it's a tiered JOC, a Joint Operations Center. We have remote power, electrical power put in, so it can operate through any type of disaster. And we have map boards up. We'll use all the things that we used. We apply military lessons learned all the time. And I tell people it's a distinct advantage over your competitor.
So context, excuse me, for context here. If you go visit Surf Pro or whoever your competition is out there, do they have anything similar? I mean, does what does their Joint Operations Center look like if such a thing exists?
That's why I'm laughing, because you're kind of stealing my thunder. Imagine a future network where all of the franchisees, kind of subordinate units, if you will, although they're not subordinate, right? They're separate companies, but we command and control them. We set up unit boundaries, and we assign claims to them based on their unit boundaries, if you will. And they report back, and we employ all of those things. Now imagine that. Close your eyes and imagine that network compared to the green guys at ServPro. If you're an insurance executive, who are you going to choose? And so it's like I tell people, it's like that Under Armour commercial. It's one of my favorite ones. Click, clack, click, clack. Can you hear us coming? Because we're coming. We're coming. And, we just finished literally doing another $2.2 million in business in Hurricane Ida. And the cool thing is, it's $2.2 million at a very low and reasonable price where we earn a fair profit. And we're not like the other contractors that are going there and literally raping insurance companies and their clients, probably poor choice of words, exploiting them and overcharging. No, because we know we're in this for the long play. We want this reputation where we just go places, do shit, ride to the sound of the guns, and do it better than anybody else because we want to do it again. And we want to do it again. And we want to do it again so we can grow more franchises and grow more opportunities for vets. My last 2 points on this were, we have this local marketing playbook. And typically what I've learned is people, so I'm an extrovert to the extreme. I'm really proud of my company. I was really proud of the battalion I commanded. So I could sell my battalion. I can sell my business better than anybody else. It's what I learned. It was a skill because I was a combat enabler as an engineer. And I had to go to the maneuver guys and tell them what we could do for them. And I do that now. But I recognize many veterans aren't comfortable in that sales aspect, or they don't have that personality for sales. So what I coach and train our franchisees in is you don't have to sell. We have a story to tell. We have a compelling story to tell. We have a compelling brand. And here's a local marketing playbook that you should use. And you tell these stories and you focus on relationships, not transactions. It's better to know us and not need us than need us and not know us. And just keep telling that to people. Yeah. And this stuff happens so frequently that if you tell the right people, they're going to remember, oh my gosh, at this disaster, I need to call those veteran guys. And that's going to stick in their mind. And that's what they do. And then when you think about it, as we talked about, the quality of our fellow franchisees, is just amazing. We have one, a West Point grad. She's a colonel in the Florida National Guard. She was the chief of plans for the state of Florida. And she owned her own construction and engineering business, and she tacked on a VetCor franchise to that. I mean, come on, man. A former insurance executive who is a Coast Guard vet, a retired lieutenant colonel, Army engineer officer, who is owns his own construction and roofing company, 3 additional West Point grads, both brilliant careers. One has an MBA from Georgetown. One's got significant experience in M&A. One's a licensed professional engineer. I mean, just amazing, Yeah. So look, there's no secret, but this is subtle but important point. Our unique selling proposition is veterans. Make it no doubt it is veterans. But here's what's the subtle and important about that. We're not asking for a handout. Don't use us, don't call us because we're a veteran-owned and primarily veteran-operated business. But because we're veteran-owned and primarily veteran-operated, we show up fit, polite, on time, treat people with dignity and respect. Most, if not all, well, in VetCor, all of, but in our franchisees, most of our middle managers are former non-commissioned officers from the U.S. military who can get a group of guys and a group of girls to be at the right place at the right time to do accomplish their task and make them hum, which is why we don't give time windows, we give times, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a subtle difference, but it's important because, I don't want a handout. In fact, I detest that aspect of that. But you tell somebody that, on time is late and early is on time, and that's the value of veteran, man, that clicks. That's sticky. They understand that because they know that. Every time, we're on a Zoom call or something, and I'm the first guy on the call, or, I don't show up late, they're like, yeah, you're a veteran. All the veterans are there. We're talking beforehand, waiting for everybody else to show up. None of this is a surprise to anybody here. But typically when people are advocating for veterans, they're talking about duty, honor, country, values, all that stuff. I stopped talking to people about that because I don't believe that people hire based on values.
Like
I think they fire based on the lack of values. So, okay, that's an assumption. So what I tell them is they're lifelong learners. They change jobs every 3 to 4 years. They change assignments every 1 to 2 years. They're used to, I went from being commanding one of the Army's 2 combat airborne engineer battalions, to being the dean of the engineer school. Those 2 assignments could not be more drastically different. But I succeeded at both of them, and the Army had confidence in me doing both of them. That's just a different cultural approach. We all have recipes for success. I talk about the art of battle command, understand, visualize, describe, direct, assess. It's still stuck in my head. 5 components of mission statement: who, what, where, when, why. Talk about leading millennials. Everybody bitches about you always got to tell them the why. I said the why is the 5th component of the mission statement. We've been doing that since, forever in the military. So maybe it's the leadership that has a problem because you haven't been explaining the why to the millennials. We've been doing it. Everything's worthy of an after action. What happened, why it happened, how we can improve. We are the best military in the world, and people don't understand this. because we are so critical of ourselves, right?
Perspective.
Right. Yes. And it works. And so we do that all the time. That's why we just continue to get better, particularly with the catastrophe responses. You know, and then there are significant incentives on hiring veterans. I got a $13,000 tax credit, me personally, because we used the work opportunity tax credit for hiring veterans. I was going to do it anyway, but that's $13,000 locked off my personal tax bill because we used the WOTC, work opportunity tax credit, to hire veterans. Healthcare, I pay $500 a year, something like that, for TRICARE for me and my family. You know what I would have to pay for myself or an employee? But I don't have a large enough census to get really healthcare now, because most of my employees are retired military and they get TRICARE. It saves me money. I don't have to pay for that as an employer. And then, I tell people all I got to do is wake up, because I'm a retiree, and I make $80,000 a year between my compensation and my VA disability. And that makes a great opportunity for franchisees, because if you're getting paid yourself already, you can afford to do without a salary your first year in business if you choose to. In my case, I did, and it allowed me to be more resilient. And I couldn't have done it without that. It's helpful. And you just compare our team versus a typical service provider. Where there's a reason that plumber's butt is called plumber's butt. Guys show up and they're not fit. They don't look sharp. They don't act sharp. They don't speak professionally. They don't have attention to detail. And every time our guys go someplace, they're usually the first time they're in a collared shirt. If they're going to work, they're in like a moisture wicking t-shirt with a VetCor logo on. Their chest sticks out because they're proud of who they are, and who they've been in their previous life and who they are. Mm-hmm. That makes a big difference. So I'll ask you, if this is your sweet spot, the intersection of these four things, and Mike Long found this, and I thought this was brilliant, you're a potential candidate to be a franchisee with us. If it's not, you're not. We don't want you, right? And you don't have to love doing restoration work, but you have to love hiring veterans and doing something to help your fellow veteran. And you have to love helping your fellow man in their time of need. Clearly, the world needs restoration companies. It's a recession-proof, pandemic-proof, ongoing industry. It's not going to be replaced by robotics or AI.
As long as there's weather.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
And as long as there's mechanical failure in air conditioning units,
yep.
dishwashers, ice makers, right?
Yep.
You can get paid for it. Insurance companies typically pay us directly, and so they have deep pockets, great credit ratings, and there's a fair profit to be made within our service level agreements that we have with them. And what are you good at? You don't necessarily have to be good at this, but you have to be good at manning, training, equipping, and then learning, because we have this amazing training program where we can train you all the technical stuff. We'll even train you how to read a P&L, train you how to do marketing, all that kind of stuff. So it's something to consider, right? But here's the other thing. We offer a $2,500 referral because we recognize, and I never really understood this in the sales world, but the conversion rates for internet leads, and it's all crap, right? So if you hear this presentation and you go, you know what, I have a classmate that is looking to make a change, and I believe this guy, Paul, because he was really passionate about his topic. It sounds like he's got a great business model. If you make a recommendation to us and that referral leads to a signed franchise agreement, one, I recognize that, Jason, if you make that referral, that your reputation is going with that referral right along with mine, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a value to that. Plus, if you make a quality referral, you spend time in writing an email or a text or talking to someone about us, there's time and there's value to that. And so I'd rather pay someone to give us that quality referral and recognize them for that, for their time and efforts, than spend X thousands of dollars on advertising that I don't know if it is going to the right person, right? But after you hear this presentation, and if you find a retired senior officer or non-commissioned officer, that's tier one, because those guys have retirement pay already. So we know, and they come with a ready network, right? They had a bunch of people that used to work for them, just like me. They're probably going to want to get the band back together. If you have a former officer, usually a junior officer or senior NCO with some corporate experience, but maybe doesn't feels dirty doing that, wants to get back into kind of the same cultures, norms, and values, we're a good fit. If you have a transitioning mid-grade officer that maybe got an MBA or just wants to get out, but has some talents, but just didn't like the Army or the military bureaucracy, we're a good fit. If you have a former corporate leader that's looking to transition into some other business and they have kind of similar characteristics, but maybe not, but a civilian, right? But similar characteristics that you see in kind of your peers, and you go, man, you would fit in well with these guys, and it's a good business opportunity. They're a good fit for us. And then lastly, if you run into kind of someone who was a junior enlisted person and maybe spent the first tour of duty in the military, then got out and was successful in the civilian business world, but they find themselves wanting to go back to the VA or to the VFW or American Legion because they miss that sense of camaraderie and they hate the ethics in corporate America, and come back and join the team again, right? And use that newfound business knowledge that you have and that experience and the kind of the cultures, norms, and values that we're used to, and come back on the team. So those are kind of the people that we're looking for. You don't have to be a veteran, but you have to share the same values as a veteran. Here's what the kind of the basics cost structure. Our franchise fee is $45,000, $10,000 discount for veterans and their immediate family members. We have to publish a range. It's about $133,000 to $188,000 for a single territory of additional investments. That includes vehicles, equipment, expendables, and 3 months operating capital, because you got to have to account for cash flow. I would tell you, if you wanted to do this, use OPM, other people's money. We're a preferred franchisor with the SBA. Man, we can help you create a pro forma, and if you do a decent job at a pro forma and it shows that you're going to make a profit, you can get an SBA loan. And then you're using other people's money, and then that SBA loan is typically amortized over a period of 10 years. So you have, it turns out to be probably $2,000-3,000 a month that you got to pay to pay that debt service, and then that really alleviates it because you're amortizing over 10 years. We prefer to have an owner operator, but we don't want people that are working in the business. We want people that are working on the business. We know that typically military leaders want to learn and want to do things themselves, at least so they can demonstrate that they understand what's going on. That's okay. But we really want them to be the person that's meeting with adjusters, real estate agents, apartment managers, facility managers, to try and get business and tell their story, and then be the local veteran advocate. We can deal with a semi-absentee or absentee owner, but we're really protective of our brand, particularly because we only have 10 franchises so far. So we want to be careful about that, and it would have to be the right person in the right mix. As we get going, we're really looking at trying to recruit potentially like retired flag officers who maybe don't want to do this anymore, but have some capital to inject, and pair them up with maybe a junior or a senior non-commissioned officer that doesn't have the capital. And then we'd be a matchmaker with investors, with people who are coming out of the military, but those investors, as retired former military, understand what the capabilities of a junior non-commissioned officer. And so that gives them a wealth building opportunity. And that's what we're looking for in the future. Here's the only territories we have closed right now. 5 in Florida, 1 in New York, 1 in Virginia, Hampton Roads, Virginia, 1 in Norcross, Georgia. I just flew back Friday from opening 1 in Austin, Texas, and College Station, Texas. Otherwise, the world's your oyster. The territories are open. We're not registered in those states just because we haven't seen a demand signal yet, and they're harder employment and harder franchising states. We could if somebody really wanted to, but we're just going to wait because we're going to focus our efforts elsewhere.
Paul, this is Mike. We just got word we are good to go in Illinois as of today.
There we go. Thank you, sir.
And just to let everyone know, we are an Equal Academy Opportunity franchisor. We do have a Naval Academy graduate class of '88 who is wrapping up some paperwork issues that he has on his end. He's been through the full process and should be signing his agreement to start a VetCor franchise just outside of Cincinnati in Lebanon, Ohio. So we do take all and accept all. So just wanted to make sure that is clear for everyone out there.
Excellent. Excellent.
You don't have any Air Force. We need some Air Force. We have a Marine You have
Space Force is
Co-Star.
coming.
Yeah. So this is our values. Aspire stands for accountability and responsibility, service, pride, integrity, respect, and excellence. We encourage people to aspire to greatness and looking for teammates that want to do that. And then there's our contact information. Look, we're happy to follow up. I have a whole shit ton of scars and lessons learned from my personal transition. And then, you know, just spending the last 8 years, I was a guest speaker at HR Florida a couple of years ago to talk to HR professionals about the value of veterans. That's really my passion. I'm fortunate that I have a great team to include Mike that's run our franchising stuff, you know, retired Army Sergeant Major is our Chief Operating Officer, as I mentioned. And so that allows me to get out in the community. And frankly, I've traveled around in the Southeast and spoke on veterans issues. I'm happy to talk about veterans issues, transition, et cetera, small business ownership, lessons learned, franchising. I'm a certified franchise executive now. Mike's working on his, he'll have his soon, as well as Scott. So with that, what are your questions and how can we help?